Tim and I worked together at Premier Realty. When my daughter started high school, I wanted to find a part-time job. Tim and his wife lived 2 houses down from us, and we often spent evenings together at neighborhood parties. When I announced my intention to look for work, Tim arranged an interview for me. Although I mainly work in the office and Tim usually goes out to meet clients, he gradually seduced me. At first, I brushed off all the little compliments he gave me to make me feel sexy, but soon I began to look forward to them and appreciate them. I never intended to have an affair, but it happened. The combination of his mischievousness and his skill as a lover, who gave me the most explosive orgasms of my life, was enough to make me cheat on my husband again. Now we use my husband Sid's trips as an opportunity for forbidden adult entertainment. No one gets hurt, and no one is deprived of pleasure in the bedroom. Slowly getting dressed, we talked about the kids, school, and vacation plans. When he left the bedroom, I turned on the shower. I hadn't even gotten my feet wet when Tim burst into the bathroom and quietly closed the door. "He's sitting there with a gun!" "What are you talking about? Who has a gun?" "Sid, he's in the kitchen with a gun." "Oh, shit!" I quickly threw on a robe. "He's supposed to be in Washington. I talked to him this morning." "He's not in Washington, and I don't think we're going to survive." Did he say anything? No, I don't even know if he noticed me. I watched him for a few seconds. He was tapping the gun handle on the table and staring into space. Damn it! What should we do? My panicked response was useless. I don't know. I don't know. My head was spinning. My heart was pounding. I didn't think Sid was a violent man. Yes, he had a gun, but I couldn't remember the last time he'd been to the shooting range. We have bars on our windows. It's not that we live in a bad neighborhood, quite the opposite. Our neighborhood is so affluent that it attracts thieves. Better safe than sorry. We installed a security system after our neighbors lost nearly $100,000 in art and jewelry. I doubt we have that much, but probably not much less. Sid is a very successful investor. All I could think about was calling the police. If he came up the stairs looking for us, we were done for. 911, what's going on? My husband is sitting at the kitchen table with a gun in his hands. I'm afraid for my life. Where are you calling from? I'm hiding upstairs. Is anyone else with you? Yes, my friend. I've dispatched a unit. Can you let the police in? No, I can't get past him. I see. I'll let the police know. What is your name and your husband's name? My name is Polly and his name is Sid Barrett. He's supposed to be in Washington. Okay, let me guess. Your friend isn't supposed to be there? I paused to gather my strength and replied, Yes, that's right. Good luck. The police may call you back if the situation drags on. Please don't hurt him. I can't promise that, Polly. Damn it. My heart stopped. Tim was hiding in my closet. I heard sirens approaching. I tiptoed through the bedroom and looked out the window. A patrol car with 2 officers pulled up 1 house down from us. Wearing bulletproof vests, they approached my front door with their guns drawn. The doorbell rang. A loud knock on the door drowned out the echo. I watched as one of the officers crept past the garage. We have a sliding glass door that leads to the backyard. From there, he could probably see Sid. The bathroom adjacent to the master bedroom has a window that overlooks the backyard. I tiptoed over to the window, which was open a few inches. The cop behind me covered it with the barrel of a large ash tree. He spoke quietly into a device attached to his collar. The situation remained the same. I quietly returned to the window facing the street. A second squad arrived. 2 more officers. This time they brought automatic weapons. I could only think of one thing. Please don't hurt Sid. Why didn't Sid let the officers in? God! Had he already hurt himself? Tears filled my eyes. One of the officers with an automatic weapon rushed into the yard. At that moment, I heard the loudspeaker. Sid Barrett, drop your weapon and come out. No one will get hurt. All I could hear was my own rapid breathing. There was no sound coming from the house. "Come on, Sid, give up!" The megaphone came on again. "Sid, can you hear us?" I quietly returned to the bathroom window. The police were talking on their radios. The officer with the rifle replied, "He's just sitting there banging the butt of his rifle on the table. Sounds like a Glock." "Don't shoot," came the reply. My cell phone rang. I answered in a whisper. "Hello? Polly, this is Captain Mandrell. Does your husband have any mental health issues?" I replied quietly. "No, nothing like that. He's not an aggressive person and would rather shoot himself than hurt anyone." "We have to take safety precautions. If he doesn't put the weapon down, we'll have to neutralize him." With a lump in my throat, I pleaded, "Please don't hurt him." The loudspeaker continued. "Sid, raise your hands if you can hear us." A minute of silence passed before the officer's radio crackled. "Take his weapon." Before I could comprehend the meaning of those words, a white cloud of smoke erupted from the rifle. The sound broke my heart. They shot Sid. No one moved. The officer said into the radio, "The weapon has fallen from his hands. He's not moving. He may be dead. Approach with caution." I couldn't hold back a scream. "No!" With rifles and pistols at the ready, 2 officers stepped into the courtyard. I lost sight of them. Making my way to a window facing the street, I saw an ambulance and 2 more police cars. The crowd rushed to the front door and I heard noise on the first floor. My cell phone rang again. "Polly, you need to get down on the floor. Your friend, too. We'll be upstairs soon." "How's Sid?" "He's in a catatonic state. Get on the floor, now!" I screamed, "Tim, get on the floor or they'll shoot you." The closet door opened and Tim threw himself onto the carpet. I felt the bedroom door open. The hinge creaked slightly. "Don't move!" After searching us, they helped us to our feet. "My husband! What have you done to my husband?" "He's alive. They're loading him into the ambulance." At that moment, sirens wailed, and they drove away. Please let Sid be alive. When I went outside, I learned that they had knocked the gun out of Sid's hands. He didn't react, just sat there and stared. There was a wound on his arm. The bullet had gone through the kitchen window, shattering the glass. They had also kicked the door open from the garage into the house. The police took Tim's statement, and then he left without looking at me. His wife was yelling at him, and I doubt their marriage will survive. When I was questioned, I tried to answer honestly, at least about why Tim was there. It was over an hour before I was allowed to leave to check on Sid. The hospital staff was friendly, but no one gave me any meaningful information. It was several more hours before Sid's attending physician gave me the latest news. "Mrs. Barrett, I'm Dr. Schaffer. In addition to losing a finger on one hand, your husband has suffered a traumatic brain injury. This is usually caused by severe shock. What happened at your home today?" "Sid apparently left this morning for a meeting in Washington. A gentleman came to my house, and when he was about to leave, he found Sid sitting in the kitchen with a gun." "Is it possible that Sid saw you with your friend, and that provoked the attack?" "It's possible. I was having sex with my neighbor." "Did Sid know about this relationship?" "Not as far as I know." "Almost certainly, he discovered you and decided to kill you. Shortly after he found the gun, he must have snapped." "Is Sid responding in any way?" "Visually, no. He responds to electrical impulses, but that's all. Most of his responses come from the brainstem, not from cognitive functions." "Can I try talking to him?" "If you don't mind." Dr. Schaffer led me into Sid's room. "Sid, I love you," was all I managed to say before Sid opened his eyes and started screaming like a baby with colic. It was a high-pitched, continuous scream. Dr. Schaffer immediately covered my mouth with his hand and pushed me out of the room. "I'm sure you're the cause of Sid's mental disorder. What you did was beyond his comprehension." It was difficult to call my daughter. Rhonda and Sid were very close, like father and daughter. She is a junior in college. Last summer, she broke up with Paul, her high school boyfriend. He wanted to try other women, and Rhonda, having tried other men, decided she would spend her remaining 2 years in college making up for lost time. Paul had repeatedly tried to rekindle their relationship, but to no avail. "Hi, Mom. I saw you called a few times. What's wrong?" "It's your father. He had a severe epileptic seizure and is now at the university hospital under observation." "My God! When did this happen?" "This morning." "In Washington?" "No, at our house. I don't know why he wasn't in Washington." "Can I visit him?" "I don't know. They won't let me into his room. He doesn't respond when I try to talk to him." "Mom, I have an important exam tomorrow. I can't leave, but I have to be there if he needs me." "Honey, he doesn't recognize anyone right now. Stay and take your exam. I'll tell him you wanted to be here if he becomes more responsive." My new life began. The first few weeks were the hardest. I fell asleep in tears, knowing that I had caused Sid pain. Checking with the hospital staff to see if there were any changes in Sid's condition was very depressing. He sat, stood, or lay alone, and didn't respond to anything except the recorded sound of my voice. His frightened cries tore my heart apart. What had I done to him? Would he ever forgive me? Even 8 weeks after the accident, he screamed when he heard my voice. They tried visual stimuli, but even when Sid was shown my photo, his brain showed almost no response. It took time to sort out the finances. I cut back on all non-essential expenses. The loss of Sid's income began to weigh on me, and I had to draw up a budget and stick to it strictly. Depending on our insurance and how long it lasted, I would have to start liquidating our investments to make ends meet. Weeks turned into months. Sid was admitted to the psychiatric ward of a treatment facility. Insurance covered treatment for up to 3 years, so time passed. I changed jobs, mainly to be around people who didn't know my past. If a man started courting me, I rejected him with complete hostility. My first job didn't last long because I had anger issues. After a few anger management sessions, I learned to control my emotions. I'm pleasant to talk to, but I become cold if someone flirts with me. Men understand this signal, and I can do my job in peace. Gradually, Rhonda learned that Sid had found Tim and me at the house. I lost my daughter, at least for a while. 10 months and a few days after the incident, Sid came to. The doctor said that Sid was no longer responding to my voice. I couldn't wait to see her in the psychiatric ward. "Sid, I'm so glad you're better." "Who are you?" I froze in shock and felt the blood rush to my legs. "I'm Polly, your wife." "I don't think so. If you were my wife, I would recognize you and feel butterflies in my stomach. You probably look like someone I knew, but I don't remember loving you." He turned away as if he didn't want to talk to me. "Sid, don't say that. We have a daughter. I love you and you love me." "I'm sorry, I don't remember loving you. I heard you mention children. Did you say we have 1 or 2? The nurse pulled me by the arm and led me out of the room. "Give him time, Polly." I've seen reactions like this before. I went into Sid's room several times during the day. His reaction was completely neutral. It was as if we had never met. He treated me the same way he treated the nurses. Unfortunately, he rejected all my attempts to do anything that the nurses didn't do. It was as if Sid had lost all memory of me. Rhonda flew out on the first flight and arrived in the middle of the night. After a few hours of sleep, she went to visit Sid. I tried to warn her that he might not recognize her, but my heart was breaking. Sid recognized Rhonda and was overjoyed. I watched them from across the room. Sid expressed his shock at losing 10 months of his life. They hugged, they kissed, they hugged. I cried. Raising his right hand, he asked Rhonda, "How many fingers do I have on my hand?" Rhonda told him about the shooting. They laughed, hugged, and kissed again. Tears streamed down my face. "What happened to your mom?" Sid asked. She's still alive, Rhonda replied, but you probably wouldn't recognize her. You know, I've been trying to remember her name, but even when people say it, it doesn't mean anything to me. Polly, right? That's right. Did they show you a picture of her? That's another strange thing. They tell me that even a few minutes after they show me a picture of her, I forget her face. Tears streamed down my face. His brain wouldn't let me exist anymore. I meant less than nothing to him. Rhonda's hurt look only intensified my pain. Rhonda resumed her relationship with Sid. I stayed out of it. I was like a nurse assigned to take care of him. A week after returning home, Sid resumed his daily bargaining. When I learned that my conversations with Sid had also disappeared from his memory, my heart broke again. I was at a crossroads. Was it worth the risk that Sid would eventually recognize me? That risk also meant that Sid could relapse. Not wanting to jeopardize Rhonda's future with her father, I left. With the help of Rhonda, who was helping Sid with financial matters, we decided that I should file for divorce. Sid signed the papers without discussion. The monthly alimony was more like pocket money. Unfortunately, Tim is the last person I've had sex with. I don't want anyone but Sid, but I doubt that's possible in the future. My life consists of hard work and regular conversations with my daughter. I still see Sid from time to time, but the fear of relapse keeps me at a distance. My selfish decisions have forced me to live in my own hell. Rhonda doesn't want me to come over when she's with her father. I've sadly accepted that I can't have a relationship with Sid. Every day gets harder. It was Friday, the end of the work week. Paul leaned back in his chair, made his usual notes in his journal, writing down what he had accomplished and what he needed to do next, and then began gathering his briefcase. He had started writing down his daily activities many years ago. Sometimes there were days when, at the end of the workday, he couldn't remember a single productive achievement, despite all his efforts, and the very fact of writing this down in his journal was a great motivator. Besides, on good days, it was nice to take a moment to talk about his efforts and the progress he had made. In any case, he wrote down what he needed to do next so he wouldn't lose the ideas he had come up with during the day. This simple exercise always helped him get started the next day. Jerry poked his head in the door and said, "Paul, we're getting ready to have a drink and a bite to eat. Why don't you join us?" Paul started to decline, but then thought, "What the heck? There's nothing waiting for me at home but indifference." The last month had been tough, and if Paul had been honest with himself, he would have admitted that the last 6 months hadn't been the best either. His wife, Barbara, was becoming increasingly indifferent. What started as excessive distraction grew into small acts of neglect, until in the last few weeks her comments had become downright dismissive. When Paul first brought it up, she apologized, but lately she seemed increasingly annoyed by his complaints and began talking to him as if he were a child. It seemed that respect was lacking in his home, and to say that Paul was unhappy at home would be an understatement. Nevertheless, Paul thought that perhaps it was just a passing phase and called his wife to let her know he would be late. Her response did not warm his heart. "I don't care. I'm working late anyway. Go out for dinner, or there are frozen meals in the freezer." With that, she hung up without waiting for a response. "Bitch," he muttered under his breath. The get-together with his co-workers turned into dinner with friends, until one by one they had to say goodnight and go home. Paul was left alone and thought it was time for him to leave too, even though he didn't feel like it. Being a man who always thought about his work, he took a few folded sheets of paper out of his jacket pocket and began to take notes, slowly finishing only his second beer of the evening. He was programming a microprocessor, and the code had to be compact and efficient. Paul knew his stuff and liked to describe it as pouring a liter of beer into a pint glass without spilling a drop. Paul was engrossed in the details of the code when a quiet voice behind him said, "Paul, mind if I join you?" He looked up, knowing whose voice it was. It was Jenny. Paul couldn't help but smile. They had been working together for over a year, and Jenny was a smart woman with a kind heart. He found her to be kind to everyone and, to be honest, a little vulnerable. He liked that. When she entered, a gentle warmth filled the room, and she was exactly what he needed at that moment. "I thought you left." "Well, I went to the ladies' room, and then I saw you sitting here alone." Pointing to the chair across from him at the table, he said, "Please, I wouldn't mind some company." Jenny didn't sit in the chair he offered her, but instead sat down on the chair next to Paul. Looking into his eyes and then leaning in to deliberately reduce the distance between them so she could see his notes, she asked, "What are you working on?" Paul smiled sheepishly. "I'm just working on a piece of code for this processor. We're trying to do too much at once." Jenny smiled. She knew about Paul's talents. "If anyone can do it, it's you." Paul grinned briefly. He wasn't used to receiving many compliments these days. "Well, we can't pretend it's too easy, can we? Management needs to know that we can do the most difficult work and that the impossible just takes a little longer." That's how they spent the next hour. They talked about work and exchanged a few unflattering remarks about the company's management, which they nevertheless respected for the most part, and then, without much fanfare, she turned the conversation to their personal lives. She told him about her parents' wedding and her older brother, and tried to get him to talk. You see, Jenny knew more than she let on. It was already past 8 when the discussion was winding down. Paul finished the glass of tonic with lime he had switched to, not wanting any more beer, and Jenny realized it was now or never. She was inexperienced in this and had mixed feelings because Paul was a married man, but she was determined to give it a try. "Why don't we go to the ballroom and dance a little?" Paul gave her a strange, embarrassed look. Then Jenny added, "Then maybe you could give me a ride home." She was a shy young woman, and this was the most shameless thing she had ever done. At that moment, she felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice with no solid ground beneath her. Paul hesitated. I really need to get home. Barbara's probably making dinner for me." It was a lie. Barbara wasn't interested in him or his dinner. But he was a married man and felt he was in a dangerous place. Jenny bowed her head and muttered, "I just thought that maybe after what Barbara told me, you might want to spend some time with me." That statement alone hit Paul like a heavyweight punch. "What do you mean? After what Barbara told you?" Jenny looked at him with sadness and confusion in her eyes. "I just saw her last Tuesday when I was out with my friends, and she explained to me what you two had agreed." Agreed? Agreed to what? Now Jenny was not only embarrassed, but also confused. "I saw her with a man I didn't know, and it surprised me because she wasn't behaving quite like a wife should. She saw me looking at her, so she came over and explained that you knew and that you had one of those open marriages." Paul was stunned. What did she do that wasn't appropriate for a wife? Jenny felt increasingly uncomfortable. First, she had done something she had never done before by asking a married man to meet her, and now she was telling Paul things about his marriage that he seemed to know nothing about. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything." Jenny got up to leave, but Paul stopped her and asked her to stay. He tried to collect his thoughts and finally said, "Jenny, if I'm in an open marriage, no one ever told me that. Barbara and I talked about fidelity long before we got married, and cheating in any form was strictly forbidden. However, to be honest, the last 6 months or so have not been pleasant at home. I've been trying to piece everything together and figure out what went wrong, and I think you might be able to help me fill in the missing pieces of the puzzle. Is my wife cheating on me?" It was a terrible burden for Jenny to carry on her shoulders. Paul deserved the truth, but Jenny's knowledge was uncertain at best, so she didn't want to destroy his marriage with false statements. Nevertheless, the dancing, combined with the caresses and teenage kisses, left no room for doubt. I don't know, but if I had a husband and he behaved the way I've seen her behave, he wouldn't be my husband for long. Paul was at a loss, not knowing which way to go. This new information allowed him to make sense of the events of the past few months. Barbara was having an affair, and it was taking up all her time while she was awake. No wonder she didn't have time for her husband anymore. Her thoughts were occupied by another man. Paul slammed his fists on the table. "Bitch!" This time it wasn't so quiet. Paul shouted, and everyone at every table in the room heard him. Jenny flinched, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh no, not you! Not you!" Paul knew what he had to do. Standing facing the room and seeing that everyone was looking at him, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I'm sorry, my girlfriend just gave me some bad news." Then turning to Jenny, who looked stunned, he continued, "She's a wonderful woman and a good friend. I didn't mean her. I would never mean her. You know that, Jenny, don't you? I would never call you that." Jenny nodded, and tears streamed down her cheeks. She mourned her friend and felt the pain he was going through. Paul sat down and took Jenny's hands. "You know I would never call you that, don't you? You are a lovely, wonderful woman whom I am honored to call my friend." Now Jenny smiled and leaned in to hug the man. Wiping away her tears, she asked him, "What are you going to do?" Paul had never considered anything like this before. "I don't know. I could ask her, but would she tell me the truth?" Jenny slowly shook her head. "Anyone who cheats will lie," she thought. "Maybe I should hire a private investigator. How much would that cost?" He thought about it. My God, did she bring him to our house? Paul couldn't tell if he was thinking rationally or letting his imagination run wild, so he tried his best to steady his breathing and wondered if there could be another explanation. They sat together for a while, talking and thinking, but they didn't come to any real conclusions. Finally, it was time to leave, and they went out together. "Paul, I'm sorry for what I said earlier." Paul was confused. "What do you mean?" He honestly couldn't remember anything Jenny had said that could have hurt him. Her voice sounded extremely embarrassed. "I asked you to come to my house. I've never done that with a married man before. It's just—" She couldn't finish her sentence. Paul hugged Jenny and whispered in her ear, "That was the nicest compliment I've ever received, and the most tempting." He took a step back to look at her. "If Barbara is cheating on me, I'll file for divorce. I won't live with a cheater." He smiled sadly. "If I end up alone, you better be ready, because I'm coming after you. You are without a doubt the sweetest woman I've ever known. You're smart, funny, and you have a big heart. I wish I'd met you sooner." It was a powerful confession, but deep down, he knew that the story Jenny had told him was true. Still feeling like a married man, he kissed her on the forehead, took one last sad look at the woman who cared more about him than his own wife, and headed for his car. Paul sat in his car for a few more minutes, thinking about what he had learned. Everything fell into place. The constant distraction, her attitude toward him, and now this new discovery, it all fit together like an indecent puzzle. Would he confront her, spy on her, or just ask her directly? He wanted certainty. At that moment, doubt was as much his enemy as his wife's behavior. He drove home, not paying much attention to the road, trying to decide what to do about Barbara. Was he sure she was cheating on him? A husband doesn't want to believe what his own thoughts are telling him. How could he find out? How was he supposed to deal with this? When he pulled up to his house, he still didn't have an answer. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice the car parked on the street in front of his house. Entering his house through the back door, he decided that he would try to avoid his wife tonight. He just wanted to be alone. If her behavior was the same as it had been in recent weeks, that wouldn't be difficult. He needed time to think. She didn't give him any. "Paul, please come into the living room." Taking a deep breath, he walked through the archway into the living room. There, sitting on the sofa, was his wife with a man he didn't recognize. The man was holding her hand and grinning. "Paul, we need to talk." In an instant, everything became clear, and he knew the answers to all his questions. He saw her guilt, he knew her intentions, and he knew what he was going to do. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, and he felt his back straighten and his shoulders relax. "Hi, wifey. I hear we're in an open marriage. Imagine my surprise." Epilogue. It's not hard to guess what happened next. Paul took the divorce in a way he could never have imagined. Now he saw Barbara in a whole new light, and it wasn't very pleasant. For her part, she was hurt by how quickly and easily Paul had written her out of his life. She had lived for a long time under the illusion that she loved two men, and the collapse of that dream affected her entire life. It was a simple divorce. At the time, they had no children. There was nothing to divide in the small house where they had just started living together. She took what she wanted from the little they had, they divided their money, and that was that. Paul will never forget that terrible night when his world fell apart and he found freedom. 6 months later, shortly after the divorce was finalized, Paul approached Jenny and asked, "Jenny, would you like to go out to dinner and maybe dance a little this weekend?" He would see that same 1,000-watt smile for many years to come, and he would never tire of it. Don't judge Jenny too harshly. Trying to seduce married men had never been her style. She saw a man she admired and decided he deserved better. As soon as Paul was free, they hit it off.